On a rain-slicked night in the heart of Hollow Creek, a city that never truly slept but rather muttered and groaned through its darkness, a young black woman pushed open the battered door of a battered little diner. Under the weak buzz of neon lights that flickered like a dying heartbeat, she emerged, her arms full with a bag of leftover food, her steps steady despite the fatigue weighing her down. Her name was Tiana Brooks, 26 years old, with skin like deep polished mahogany that caught the scarce light. She wore an old denim jacket with a torn cuff, sneakers whose soles had seen better days, and an apron stained with the history of 100 long shifts. She didn't glance around or linger. She had a mission, one she carried out every night without fail. But tonight, someone else watched. From the dim corner of the street, hidden under the awning of a shuttered pawn shop, a man stood silently, his breath clouding in the cold. His name was Miles Harrington. Not a drifter or a late-night wanderer, but the CEO of Harrington Holdings, a man whose empire stretched across half the county. Fast food chains, real estate, retail owned them all, including the small, struggling diner known as the Moonlight Diner, now little more than a red mark on his quarterly report. He hadn't come looking for salvation. He had come looking for reasons to close it. Instead, he found her. The Moonlight Diner was a relic tucked between a boarded-up laundromat and a liquor store whose neon open sign hadn't been accurate in months. Its linoleum floors were scuffed and cracked. Its vinyl booths were faded and split at the seams. The smell of burnt coffee and grease clung to the air like a stubborn ghost. It was the kind of place that belonged to the desperate and the forgotten, and to Tiana, who moved through its brokenness like it was sacred ground. Miles had sat there for nearly an hour, watching her clean, stack, wipe, and pack with a quiet efficiency that spoke of years spent mastering survival. She didn't notice him, not really. She noticed everything: the broken salt shaker, the flickering light, the way the front door always stuck if you pushed too hard, but she didn't see him for what he was. And maybe that was what intrigued him. Tiana moved with a purpose that had nothing to do with closing shifts or customer service. When she thought the diner was empty, she retrieved a small container and quietly began salvaging what was left: half a sandwich, a bowl of soup, a few rolls, carefully, methodically, almost reverently. Then she packed it into a battered canvas bag, zipped her jacket against the chill, and slipped out the back door into the night. Miles followed. He wasn't sure why. At first, suspicion: was she stealing? Selling? But the further she walked, the faster that suspicion melted into something else. Through alleys that smelled of rust and regret, past graffiti-stained walls and puddles that mirrored broken streetlights, Tiana moved with the confidence of someone who knew every crack and shortcut. She never looked back, never hesitated, her canvas bag swinging heavily against her side. Finally, she stopped before a bent iron gate squeezed between two crumbling brick buildings. Above it, a faded sign barely clinging to life read, Willow Creek Youth Shelter. Tiana rapped softly 3 knocks, then a pause, then 2 more. A secret code known only to those who belonged. The gate creaked open, and from the shadows emerged 3 small-figure children bundled in threadbare coats and mismatched shoes, faces pinched by cold and hunger. Tiana knelt, unzipping her bag. No words were exchanged. She handed out food with the solemn grace of a priestess offering communion. One of the little girls, no older than 8, launched herself into Tiana's arms with the pure, reckless joy of a child who has been forgotten too often. Miles watched, frozen, the damp seeping into his expensive boots. This wasn't charity. It wasn't even obligation. It was love, the kind that gives without asking for anything in return. He didn't sleep that night. The next day, from the sterile glass tower where he conducted his empire, Miles couldn't shake the image of Tiana kneeling in the rain, her hands chapped and raw, giving away what little she had. He ordered a file pulled. Tiana Brooks. No disciplinary actions. No complaints. More shifts covered than anyone else. Pay so low it barely registered on his ledger. A mother at home, Carmen Brooks, bedridden with failing health. A younger brother, Elijah, 14 years old, top of his class but behind on tuition payments. A tiny, unpaid debt trail tracing them both, fragile and vulnerable. And night after night, Tiana still showed up, still gave, still carried on without fanfare or applause. The next evening, Miles returned to the Moonlight Diner. This time, he didn't hide in the shadows. He took a booth in plain sight, letting the familiar greasy air cling to his tailored coat. He watched her again, the same quiet diligence, the same invisible armor. And when the last customers drifted out and the battered, closed sign swung in the door, he rose and waited. Tiana spotted him this time as she wiped down the counter. She froze, startled, a flash of fear crossing her tired eyes. "Miss Brooks," he said simply. She straightened, shoulders tensing. "Sir, I'm sorry if I'm not here about the food." Her mouth opened, then closed. Confusion warred with caution across her face. Miles took a breath. "I'm here because of what I saw." The diner seemed to hold its breath. "You're not in trouble," he said quietly. "In fact, starting tomorrow, you're the new general manager of the Moonlight Diner." Tiana blinked, stunned. "Your salary triples," Miles continued, his voice steady. "Your mother's medical bills covered. Your brother's tuition paid in full." The rag in Tiana's hand slipped, falling to the floor. "Why?" she whispered, her voice raw. "Because the world needs more people like you," he said simply. "And because someone finally noticed." The tears came then, hot and unstoppable, streaking down her cheeks as the diner, her sanctuary and her prison, blurred before her eyes. Around her, the few remaining night shift workers watched in stunned silence. Even the grizzled cook behind the grill wiped his hands on his apron and nodded once, gruff approval shining through. Tiana didn't remember how she made it home that night. She only remembered waking the next morning to find her mother smiling, really smiling for the first time in months. She remembered Eli bounding through the apartment, waving acceptance papers from a magnet school he thought he'd never be able to attend. And she remembered standing outside Willow Creek that night with a sack full of real food, not leftovers, not scraps, and seeing the children run toward her, laughing whole. Miles Harrington showed up, too, a week later, not in a pressed suit but in jeans and a fleece-lined jacket, carrying boxes of socks, soccer balls, coloring books, and new coats. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. He simply knelt beside Tiana as she handed out sandwiches. And when one small girl clutched his hand shyly, he laughed a laugh that shook the dust off a heart that had forgotten how to feel. Together, they worked until the stars winked out behind the dawn. Hollow Creek didn't change overnight. The streets still cracked. The neons still flickered. The cold still pressed down hard. But something had shifted. Hope had found a foothold in a girl with worn sneakers and stubborn kindness, and in a man who had almost missed the miracle standing right in front of him. And because of them, a small corner of the world forgotten, battered, and broken began, slowly, to heal. Tiana Brooks never asked for recognition. But now, when she walked into the Moonlight Diner, customers sat a little taller. Smiles came a little quicker. And tucked inside a battered frame behind the counter hung a photograph, Tiana surrounded by laughing children, arms full of hope. Below it, a simple plaque. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They carry the world quietly and still choose to lift others higher. And Tiana? She just kept showing up, night after night, bringing light into the dark. One meal, one smile, one heartbeat at a time. Because she knew something most people forgot. True change doesn't come from headlines or handouts. It comes from the ones who love when no one's watching. And for Hollow Creek, that was more than enough.